So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Apologies again for the confusion about the WebEx link. This is our second webinar, and we're going to have some challenges here and there. My name is Seth Paskin. I'm your host for this meeting. This is the second in a series of every other week best practice webinars that we're doing for our loyal and dedicated BMC user community. Distributing through communities themselves and trying to basically essentially help you get more value out of your investment in BMC and invite you to collaborate and communicate with other community members who share your interests. Today's topic, as you see on the screen hopefully, is custom views in the TrueSight Capacity Optimization Console. Your presenter for this week is going to be Mike West from the Platinum Engineering team. The way this is going to work, I've got your lines muted. Mike's going to show a couple of slides, talk you through some concept, and then do a demo. We encourage you to submit questions via the chat window. And Deepak Purnachandra, who's also on the call, will hopefully be able to answer those, and if not, we'll redirect those to Mike. And then when we'll end the presentation and the demo, we'll do a Q&A for you, and we'll open the audio lines if necessary. With that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Mike. Mike, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Seth. So again, this is Mike West. I'm a project architect under the Platinum Engineering Group within BMC, and we have a very short session today to talk about more or less best practices with developing custom views. What I want to do is I'm going to introduce to you a few view templates which you're probably familiar with, but I want to really focus in on the thought process around, one, coming up with the view workflow that you want to present to your end users, and how to pick the right templates as well as the right input information for those views. So to get us started, I think there's three major components that we need to really focus on when you're designing your views. And it's really typical with any development process, so I'll present it that way. One is analysis, and that is understanding your end user functional and non-functional requirements for communicating the information. Once you have a good grasp on what it is that you want to communicate, then you can start thinking about the design aspect of where the data is coming from, how you want to form the data, as well as selecting and preparing the templates that you need in order to display the data. And I think what you'll find is selecting the templates that you need to display the data is probably the simplest piece of this process, whereas more time is required up front in order to understand how you want to prepare the data. So we're going to spend a little bit of time, I know we have a very short session, to walk you through these aspects of it. And with that, I'll move on to the next page. So as you're aware, we have two types of, let's say, ways of showing information. Actually, there's three, but these are the two common types. One is presenting summary data, and the second is presenting detailed data. So with summary data, you're really coming into I guess, your view development with some idea on information that you want to share, whether it's a top-end type of presentation. Maybe you want to give your customers some idea on how much capacity is left and what are some of your bottleneck resources that you're going to be looking at from an overall perspective. Or maybe you want to present some recommendations on how you want to use the capacity based off of historical data. So the summary data options are very important for displaying this information, and most often this data comes from data marts. Data marts are prepared on the CO console, and they allow you to do the type of analyses that you need in order to present whatever idea it is that you need to provide your end users from a summary perspective. Detailed data is very closely aligned to the analyses that you do either within the workspace or in the old lifestyle views, where you can go ahead and start showing time series data for one or more selected systems. So we have a couple options for showing detailed data, and we'll kind of talk through those because your choice on which one of those templates to use may vary depending on your results. So when showing summarized data, we have two types of templates that are typically used. One is a summary table template, and the other is a Data Mart Explorer template. The main difference between the two, because both of them are able to show you the summarized data coming from data marts in a table. But the main difference is the fact that the Data Mart Explorer template provides a little bit more flexibility in presenting graphs. With that comes some more additional work that you have to do to prepare the data marts for time series as well as summary data. But it's really one of the main capabilities that separates the data mart from the summary table is the ability to display graphs. Outside of that, there are maybe some subtle differences, especially in terms of selecting of time, because summary table only allows you to select 3 predefined sets of data, time frames, either the last yesterday, 7, or 30 days, whereas the Data Mart Explorer will allow you to do more in terms of, well, putting together the information that reflects the time frame that you've designed your data mart for. The next one is showing detailed data, so we have 2 options there as well that you can choose from. One is the System Detail template, and then the second is the System Data Explorer template. The System Detail template does come with some predefined tabs to show both summary as well as the time series data, and then it also allows you to do configurations. So it's more of a pre-canned approach that you can map some of your data for. Whereas the System Data Explorer template is a little bit more free-flowing and allows you to spend more time on developing the time series data that goes into the detailed data view. So what I want to do here is, I'll talk about other templates maybe towards the end since we have limited time, but I want to take an example. And this example is, let's say, a customer request, your customer, your end user request, to show idle system data, show data for idle systems that highlights or identifies idle systems that may be in your environment. As you know, we have an out-of-the-box view for VMware that shows idle VMs, but maybe you want to extend it to also include your physical systems, or your LPARs, or your SPLPARs, or any other technology that you have that runs a specific workload, and you want to identify if these workloads are idle or not. So that's the example we're going to go through today. So part of the design process is, part of the process is design the solution and understand how you want to form the data, as I mentioned earlier. So here we're going to design, in this case, 2 different data marts that I'm going to materialize, mainly for the purposes of preparing the data so that the user interaction doesn't have to suffer through the analysis steps. In fact, what it can do is just take the results of the analyses done by the materialized data marts and present them to the user. So one data mart is just getting gathering let's say the historical data for using 95th percentile, the FIS-CP, and that's making it available so when you identify the idle systems, which is in the FIS idle data mart, then you can start presenting the utilization numbers with the records that are identified as idle. The rules that we're going to use as part of the design is that the CPU usage is going to be less than 5%. This is using 95th percentile for more than 2 weeks. And we're also looking for systems that were offline for more than 2 weeks. And the consideration period for this example is 30 days. So with that, what I want to do is go into the demo. So we're going to start with preparing the data for the custom views. So let me just pull up, let's see, a bit slow, my desktop. Okay, so in order to, like I said, we're going to focus on preparing the data for custom views. As you can see, I've created some of these templates earlier, but I want to kind of walk you through the creation of 2 of these so that you can see how it's accomplished, and then we'll go into the actual view development. So, and again, this is for the summary data. So what I want to do is I want to first create the rules for the detecting the idle systems. So I'm going to create a SQL data mart, And I'm going to make sure I build it so that it's available for the TrueSight console because I want to present it as a view. There are options to present it as both a view and a report, but for this we're just going to do it as a view. And then I'm going to call this let's see, idle detect. Okay. We'll give it. You can give it a a description as you like. And then here, this query, this code, is intended to go through the public views, identify and capture the CPU utilization information during the 30-day period, and start looking at the value of the utilization and compare it to the 5%, as we saw from the slide earlier, as one of the criteria. And also it looks for the uptime of the system and compares to see how much time it was actually in the offline mode. So those are the two main objectives that's being handled by this SQL. And I'm looking for a physical system. In this case, I'm focusing on an SPL par, because in this environment we have a lot of SPL pars, very few physicals. But this is to demonstrate that you can also do this for your non-VMs, your non-VMware systems. So when you create your data mart, you're going to have to go ahead and prepare some information about the data that you want to display. Some of it's cosmetic, but actually in reality a lot of it helps you with handling of units as you go forward. In this case it's more cosmetic than anything else, because what I'm doing is I'm just going to pick something that gives me a unit of days, and then so I'm going to pick the idle as an example, the indicator idle, days idle, okay? And then I'm going to apply this, and then I'm going to just in this case I'm just doing it just so I can get the units, although I could probably hand type it. I'm also going to use the indicator days idle as my template for this, but I'm going to make sure that this mentions that it's not idle, but this is days offline. Okay, and then we apply it. But for the most part, as you'll see in the next data mart that we create, it will map as much as it can the metrics to metrics that are within CO. So when you're doing your SQL, one good practice is to make sure the names of your columns are very closely aligned to the metrics that are within CO, and it will do an automatic mapping of those metrics. So you don't have to identify whether something is a value or to it will map it to an actual known metric and then set some of the threshold, well not thresholds, but the units for you. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and go next. Now, this analysis can be somewhat a heavy analysis. So what I want to do is I want to save this as a materialized view so that when it's scheduled, it will prepare the data, and then later on, when my end users start logging in, we can actually start seeing it. So when you're doing a lot of analyses, you want to consider using materialized tables versus using something that's more of a template where you see the data change each time you touch the graphs that are on the presentation server side. So that's one aspect of it. So I'm going to do that and say finish. Okay. Sorry, the name was too long. Okay, and then I can materialize this now or schedule it to be materialized, and preview, we can preview some of the results. So that's the first data mart that we saw from the earlier discussions, or the second one rather, the physical idle. This one's prepared ahead of time. This is just extracting all the utilization metrics and getting the 95th percentile. I'm not going to walk you through that, but I am going to walk you through creating the idle template, which is going to be the main data mart that will be accessed from the views. And all it's going to do is join the information that's from the measurement data with the idle detection to present you with a list of records and show the measured data with them. So we're going to create our second data mart. And for this one, same, it wants to be presented in the TrueSight console. This will be physical idle template, and maybe I'll just break off a couple of things here and call it temp2. And then we're going to copy the code from here into your SQL. And you can see here it's just simply joining those two tables using their physical names and then pulling some of the metrics that are available for this. And in this case, knowing that the AXLPAR does have real memory utilization without the computational memory, which is the computational memory without buffer cache, I'm looking to see if that's available for my collection or not, because some data sources may be reporting on that and others may not. And if it is, I want to use it, and if it's not, then I'll use the standard memory metric. So again, that's another design decision. So now I go through, you can see for the things that are mapped to metrics that CO knows, it actually did the mapping and the values for you. So the only thing I would have to do is just to, seems a bit repeated, but I have to go ahead and put in the days idle, go ahead and map it or put in the unit for it. So I'm just going to map this as days, just to shorten cycle here a bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing with offline. Map it to value and call it days. Okay. So next and finished. So this is something that's going to be materialized. I mean, it's not going to be materialized. It's going to show fresh data. All it's doing is joining the results of those two tables. So now let's go into the TrueSight console. So in the TrueSight console, I'm going to go to capacity views, and this is where I start creating the framework for my view based off of those data marts. So I'm going to add two pages. I'm going to add a summary page and a detail page. So I'm going to start by creating a view. I'm going to call this MWest idle for now. And I'm going to choose the Data Mart Explorer page. Actually, yeah, I'm going to choose the Data Mart Explorer page. But in this case, since I'm not doing graphs, I could have chosen either. So I'm going to go ahead and create the Data Mart Explorer page, either the Data Mart Explorer or the summary table page. So I'm going to go ahead and create the Data Mart Explorer. Okay. I'm going to give it a name, and this is going to be, I'll call it idle detection or idle systems. I'm going to disable this chart because I'm not going to use a chart for this particular view. And I'm going to focus most of my energies on creating the table. So within the table, I'm going to go ahead and select my data mart. So I'm going to go ahead and find MWest. I'm going to go ahead and use temp2. That's the one we just prepared. Give it a title for this page. So I'm going to call it idle. Let's see, detect, idle, and offline systems. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and add the columns. So here we're just going to start out with the name of the system. We're going to add the idle days so we can see how many days it was idle, if it was detected to be idle. I'm going to add the offline days. I'm going to add a couple of metrics so you can understand the configuration of this system. So we'll add the cores. We'll go ahead and add their real memory. We'll go ahead and add the file systems. I'm going to go back to the, let's see, I want to go back to the total real memory. And here you can go ahead and influence the units. So if you wanted to scale from bytes to gigabytes, you can go ahead and prepare that. So we'll go ahead and set that to gigabytes. And the same thing with the file systems. Here you may want to choose between gigabytes or terabytes. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to focus on gigabytes because there are some systems with low storage on this environment. So now you've created, based off the data mart, prepared the information for your page. So if I go and save the work that I've done, you'll see that we've created the first artifact of our view, which is basically displaying the analysis that's done to detect all the idle systems based off the data marts that we prepared. So now I want to go ahead and add in some detailed information. So I want to go ahead and add a new page to this, and we're going to pick the Data Explorer. Where's the Data Explorer? System Data Explorer. Okay. And then I'm going to call this System Profile, because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show the utilization of these systems in this environment. So if I drill down into them, I can confirm that they are truly indeed idle. So I'll call this System Profile as well for the tab. So I'm going to add in 3 charts. Now these charts are coming from the analysis, or similar to the analysis, where you don't have to prepare a data mart for this. All you need to do is go ahead and pick the metric that you want to display. And this will go ahead and render it just like you would do with a normal analysis that you do in a workspace, or the analyses that you saw in the that hit something wrong. CPU validation, yes. Good. So that's the CPU utilization. Probably one more thing I want to do is add CPU utilization as the title. I can add information like this if I like. We're going to add in the memory utilization, enable new chart. We'll call this memory utilization. Say it's a percentage, sorry, it's not a percentage. Actually, I think I am going to do a percentage. And then we'll add memutil, or real memutil. Okay, and finally I'm going to add in the file system. File system utilization. Okay, and this will be a line. Good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. All right, so this is the structure of how we want the detail. Now, the final thing to do is, or the second to last thing we want to do, is we want to connect these two together. So what I want to do is I want to edit this page. I want to go back to the table, and I want to modify the renderer for the system so that we can put in a link, and then that link would be pointing at the new page that we created. There we go, sorry. And we'll say done. And we'll apply this. And we'll save it. So now you have a hyperlink. So here we're looking at the days idle. I'll go ahead and take a look at Phoenix Aura, and we'll take a look at its utilization. So now you have a sense for what your end users will see when they navigate. So the one last thing we want to do is we want to modify the view so that the detailed data is hidden, and so it's only accessible. And again, this is a design choice. You can certainly have it other ways. So that it's only accessible from the summary table, or at least in this case from the summary table. And so now you just have your high-level view, your idle systems, you click on your link, and now you're back to your detailed table. Okay, so I know we're going a little bit over, but we started a little late. What I wanted to highlight, though, is the importance of making sure from a view development process that you understand your requirements so that you can do proper analysis on what are the artifacts you need to create, both from a data mart perspective, which we talked about earlier, as well as how you want to render the data within the view itself. And then you can start making decisions in terms of what templates to use for summary data, what templates to use for detailed data, and as you start looking at some of the other capabilities within CO to visualize data, you can also start making some decisions on which of the other templates that would be more meaningful for your environment, like the System Group Data Explorer, or the donut charts, or the tree map, visual map, and some of the more recent ones like the sunburst. Okay, so that's what I wanted to cover. I know we didn't have a lot of time for questions, and I'm assuming if there's any questions on the chat, somebody will let me know. Or we can open it up now. I think audio is available for everybody to ask questions directly.
Thank you, Mike. So we've not received any questions in the chat, but now's everybody, if you have a question or you want to share your own opinion on a best practice, please do. If you would like to speak directly to Mike, feel free to let me know in the chat window and I'll unmute your microphone. I just don't want to unmute everybody's because we'll get a lot of background noise. While we're waiting, just to let you know, this recording, I will edit it out and put it out on communities and share it and update the event posting with a link. And it will also add a copy of this presentation. We'll add it to that same event document. And you'll see here Mike has a link for some additional videos on custom views on YouTube, and I will make sure that that link is also in the event window. And that's my email address right there. If you have questions, concerns, if you'd like to share feedback on the session, or if you want additional information, please feel free to contact me directly or just simply comment on the event in the communities window, and I will get that notification. All right, so I don't see any questions in the chat window. So unless there's this, we'll go going once, going twice. I want to say thank you to Mike for a wonderfully concise introduction to custom views. Thank you all for participating and joining, and I apologize again for the confusion about the link. But hey, this is the way of things in technology. All right, our next session will be 2 weeks from today at the same time, and we'll be talking about TrueSight server automation. I'm talking about smart groups and how to best utilize those. And our presenter will be Sumit Hemnani, as well as one of the product managers. So with that, thank you all and have a great week.